And our voice is something that nobody else has. We all have a voice, and we all have the freedom and free will to use that voice. And so many people do not fully use their voice because they are afraid of hurting somebody else's feelings, of making somebody else mad, of making someone feel bad. I was speaking my truth about an experience. And so then, like I said, the reaction now has nothing to do with me because I shared my truth. When you come from a centered place, when you come from a clear place, now you can only do good with that, and you can positively impact people with your voice. Embodied CEOs don't chase trends. They pave the way. They lead from within, moved by purpose, unshaken by noise. When you are the source, you do not need permission. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. I hope you guys are having an amazing week. I took last week pretty much off. I was in California. My brother just had their second baby. So they have a newborn and a just turned 2-year-old. And it's funny. So I went out to see them and kind of help them out and just meet the baby. And I have kids almost like exact same age difference. My oldest two are almost 2 years to the day. And so it was such a throwback being there and being like, oh my gosh, like I don't miss this. That's honestly how I felt. Was like, how did I do this? How did I have a newborn baby and a 2-year-old? And I had my whole business, like that was in no place where I could like step away like it is today. So it was super fun to hang out with them, super sweet. I'm so proud of them. And also I was like, wow, I have not even like 1% in me that would want to do this again. I love my kids, love them to death. I love this season a lot with my kids. So anyways, today's podcast episode should be fun because I have some updates, some stories, and as with how I do with all my content, I'm going to take something that happened in my life and I'm going to turn it into lessons and I'm going to turn it into content. So I shared a lot of this on my Instagram story, but I had probably the biggest response that's ever happened to me from a podcast episode from a week ago, so 2 episodes ago, Tuesday podcast. And I was not expecting this. Like, it kind of shocked me. And it was just interesting. So we're going to talk about it. We are going to talk about it. So last week, I recorded a podcast episode that the center of the episode wasn't even about this story. But as I was recording the episode, this story came out. And you guys have to know this, that when I sat down to record that episode, I didn't even plan on telling the story. Like, this is how my podcast just like flow. There was no plan. There was no outline. Like, there was no like master plan or even agenda for this. So anyways, I tell the story. You should go back and listen to it if you haven't, but you probably have. I tell the story of how I was kicked out of my gym 6 months ago. And the episode, like, that was the story, but it wasn't the focal point of the episode. It was actually like the lessons from it and how it led to my content person, you know, if you listen to it. So I recorded this podcast and I ended up texting a friend and I was like, I finally shared the gym story today. And it was funny because her response was, are you afraid that that's going to get your kids kicked out of the gym? Because backstory, my kids still went to kids class in this gym this whole 6 months. And everything was great. They loved it. Like, they loved the friends. They loved the class. Like, it was great. There was zero drama. I was very intentional with not even hardly going into the gym. Anyways, so she asked me that. And I was like, no, like, that's ridiculous. I didn't even say anything bad on the episode. Like, I just shared it more from like a lessons perspective. I felt really great about how I shared it. So come Wednesday last week, I'm not even home. I'm out of town. It's an hour before my nanny is supposed to take my kids to CrossFit Kids class, and I get this huge text message from that gym owner kicking my kids out of that gym who have done nothing wrong. I get this huge text message that kicks my kids out of the gym, effective immediately, says I'm not allowed on the property of this gym. I still went there to go see a chiropractor who's in the building, who I paid every single week to support my back and my shoulder injuries, whatever. I'm not allowed on the property, effective immediately. And if I continue to speak about my experience, granted, I didn't say the name of the gym or the name of this owner. If I continue to speak about it, they will seek legal action against me. And I sat there and I'm like, oh my God, this is insane. This is insane. So I text my nanny and I'm like, don't tell the kids why yet. They can't go to class. Like, I'm going to figure it out and I'm going to tell them, because they're going to be super upset. Like, they honestly love that class and they love the friends, and it's such a bummer. But I was like in shock for a second. And then I was pissed because I'm like, how dare you mess with my kids? And then I'm like, did I say something on that podcast episode that was mean or wrong? And I went back and listened to it and I'm like, I mean, I could see how it might upset somebody because it was very honest about the situation, but justifying kicking kids out of a gym and threatening legal action, I'm like, this is crazy. So I've never had that type of a response that actually has impacted my personal life like that. And I sat with it that day. I mean, I felt emotions, like, right? I was definitely angry because I'm like, mama bear, right? Like, how dare you mess with my kids who don't deserve this? And there is zero argument that my kids being in that class, paying members, negatively impacts that gym or that community. Zero. If you want to say that me being there does, fine, but my kids, no. And I mean, I didn't even go in the gym to pick them up. Like, I would just walk and grab them. So it's based out of no logic, right? And so of course I was upset. I'm like, this, again, so unfair, so ridiculous. But I've been through it already with this individual. And so I'm like, it's going to lead to something better. But I will not be threatened on completely BS threats. Like, I didn't name the gym. I didn't do anything, quote, wrong. And if this person just would have let it go, it probably would have been better for them. So of course, I take it to my Instagram stories and I put it out there. Like, you cannot be a bully. You're bullying the wrong person, because I will not be bullied. So anyways, I'm not really going to I want to tell the story because, like, holy crap. And I'm not going to be silenced. And that podcast episode is probably my number one downloaded of the year, because the thing about CrossFit communities is they do love the drama, and the way that this owner responded created more drama, like drew more attention to it, because I'm not going to just be silent about it. It's wrong. And when you are, and CrossFit should stand for community and support. And that is the opposite of what CrossFit stands for. So anyways, I'm definitely not recording this episode to get into the drama, but I wanted to share it because I share everything with you guys. And then I wanted to use it as an opportunity to talk about, how do you share truth as a content creator? How do you know what the line is? And what do you do in these situations, right? Because when you start to share truth, your truth, right? I understand that actually my story is not her truth. She has a different version of what happened, and there is no right or wrong. I think that both of us have, valid points. I shared my honest, experienced perspective of what happened. And when you share that, are you going to offend people? And I talk a lot in my content about conviction, right? And having conviction and standing for something. And when you stand for things and you have this conviction and you choose to speak it, you are going to upset people. And the other thing about content, at least for me, is my best content is my real life. I don't know how to not share that and be honest. And so I want to talk about how my thoughts around that. And I also want to talk a little bit about the response to this, because, I think we can learn from this too. As business owners, let's say that you're on the other side. Let's say that right, she's a business owner. Let's say this happens to you. What's the best way to respond to it? What she did was definitely not the best way, but I want to turn this into lessons. And also, I will not be silenced or threatened on using my voice. So first of all, on sharing truth, sharing stories, sharing authentically, sharing vulnerably. When this first happened, when the original story first happened, which was 6 months ago, I knew that it was inappropriate for me to take this to my content, because I still was very emotionally charged. When I got kicked out of the gym, I was really hurt. I was really angry about it. Like, it felt really unfair. And I did get over it relatively fast. As soon as I found a new gym, I was pretty much over it because I found a much better place for me. But I knew that if I went to create content in that moment, it wouldn't have been appropriate. So that's the first thing. When you are going through something in your life, and most content creators, your best content is things that you're going through in your life that you can take and turn into applicable lessons and stories and share. And that's why people follow people, because it's relatable, because they can connect with it. But there's a difference between sharing content as an open wound and coming from a very emotionally charged, like even victim-y place, right? You haven't processed it. And then there's a difference of sharing it from that place and sharing it from a place of I've processed. This is still very real, but I've processed it enough myself that I can share. So for me, I didn't have like an exact timeline. I will say that my kids being in that gym kept me more quiet than I probably would have been if they weren't in the gym, because I did know what this owner was capable of and what she would do, and that she'd use her power to try to hurt me as much as possible. But when I shared it, I mean, it was not an open wound anymore. So that's the first thing of like when to share things on social as a content creator is you have to make sure that like emotional charge isn't there, and connect with and check in with like, where is this coming from, right? Is this coming from a place of I want to get revenge, or I want people to be on my side, or I want to share this and get validation, right? Those are all human things. Is the motivation behind sharing the story, sharing the situation that, or is it, I have processed this in a healthy way. I've processed this with the close people around me and shown the spectrum of human emotions that we naturally have, anger, sadness, whatever. And now I've processed it and I can share it from a place of neutrality. And I genuinely feel like in that podcast last week, I was in a pretty neutral place. I am. Like, I feel that. I think that neutrality balanced a little when you kicked my kids out of the gym, but I was in a pretty neutral place when I shared it. And I went back and listened to it, and I'm like, I'm just sharing my perspective. It wasn't at all because I wanted to be mean to this person, because I wanted to make them upset. I actually didn't even think they listened to it. Like, honestly, I was like shocked. But again, gym communities, they all talk. So that's the first thing. When you're thinking about sharing something very real in your life that you're going through, check in with where it's coming from that you're sharing it, and make sure you are sharing it from the place of as much as possible neutrality. That doesn't mean that you don't have passion in what you share. That doesn't mean you don't have conviction in what you share, but you're not sharing it from a place of like, I'm angry, I need validation, I need people to tell me I'm right, tell me I'm wrong. Like, you're detached from that response. And usually that takes some time to process. So even last week when this happened on that Wednesday, I waited until the next day. I waited a full 24 hours before I even put anything on social, because I knew like I need to sleep on this and I need to decide if I'm going to put something on social media or not. And in that heat of the moment, if I would have gone and put it, within an hour or even that same day on Instagram and shared it, it wouldn't have been from a fully like grounded place. But I slept on it. I woke up that morning and I was like, no, I feel aligned with putting this on my stories. Like, I would like to share this, and I would like to share this from a perspective of, do not let people who are threatened by you silence you. So that's the first thing when you think about it. The next thing is when you think about sharing, in your content, whether this is something you're going through or a belief. There's a lot of people that you should have convicted, strong beliefs, and you think about sharing something, you're like, oh, I don't want to offend someone. What is this person going to think? Like, people don't understand unless you've created content that this is a very real thing where there are repercussions to what you say, right? This is an extreme one, right? Getting my kids kicked out of a gym and my kids actually suffering from my content. That is the first time that's happened to me in all the years of creating content. And I feel bad. Like, I do feel bad, right? Like, I sat with, like, should I have shared that on my podcast? Like, am I making my kids have a negative repercussion to something that's not their fault because of me. And while yes, that is true, that my content resulted in this for them, I sat with that and I was like, but I don't really want my kids in that environment anyways. And I don't actually want to be giving my money to that gym anyways. So there's already a misalignment that we were ignoring just because our kids were happy in it. And when it first happened and I told my husband, he is like, it's fine. Like, we'll find a different place because we don't want our kids there anyways, if that's how she feels about you. And I already have options, right? And so while yes, I sat with like, shit, did I create this like negative experience for my kids? And I feel bad because they are upset about it. But then in the bigger picture, I'm like, would I have then not said anything on the podcast about this story? And I know with confidence the answer to that is no, I still would have. I still feel aligned with that. So as a content creator, as somebody who creates content, puts yourself out there, right? This is a big thing, because even if it's not as extreme as like you're upsetting someone and they do something to you because of it, because they're mad at you for it, it's still like you're putting yourself out there to be judged. You're putting yourself out there to be disagreed with. And people are ruthless, right? Like when you create content, you have to develop this armor and really separation. So that's what I want to talk about today is like first of all, like how do you know when it's appropriate to share it? And then second of all is like, how do you share these things and separate yourself from the response? And I've been doing this a long time. So it's pretty rare that somebody actually can like get to me in the sense of doubting my content. Even in this situation, yes, this person had power over me. And so they were able to impact my life, which that's what they were trying to do. But their opinion of my podcast and my content, and even how I responded and what I have said and how I have reacted and what I've done, I feel fully aligned with. And so again, it's like everything kind of comes back to you. So first of all, on the should you share it, it's checking in with where is this coming from? Am I actually aligned with how I share it, when I share it with let's say it's something you believe that is a controversial belief? You have to check in with like, where is that belief coming from? And if it is coming from full alignment with you and your expression and what you think and how you show up in the world, then you should share it. And then when there is a response to it, you have to understand that every single response is a reflection of that person. And that's immediately what I realized is I said, this person's response, because in the first hour, I was like, shit, like, did I say something on that podcast that I shouldn't have said? Like, when I record my podcast, you guys, I don't even remember what I say. I'm just talking right now. Like there's no script. There's no like bullet points. I'm just having a conversation. And again, I sat down to record that podcast and did not plan to tell that story. So like I listen back and I'm like, oh, like I wish I said this, whatever, but it's just not, it's raw. So when it immediately happened, I knew, and I thought, the issue is not that I shared this on the podcast, which this person obviously wants me to feel that way and slandered me as a person. But the issue is their response to it. And their response is a reflection of them and not me. And it is just data. It is data in what they are able to handle as a person, in what I triggered in them. And, what I must have really hit something bad, right? Like that reflected something that they cannot see and don't want to see. And so what do humans do when that happens? They try to gain back control. They try to gain back power. And so this individual was very upset over the fact that I shared an honest experience without naming names on my podcast. And so their response was to gain back as much power and control as they could. And the way that they knew how to do that was make me suffer by cutting my kids out of a gym and cutting me from seeing a chiropractor, which ultimately you've just hurt my kids. And you've also cost this chiropractor thousands of dollars a month that I was paying him, but he's not allowed to see me. So I look at this and I go, this has nothing to do with me. I shared my honest experience. I went back and listened to my podcast and I said, I'm still fully aligned with everything I said. Everything I said was my honest experience. Sure, yes, she has a different perspective. People have different perspectives. So when you're thinking about sharing a story, when you're thinking about being convicted in your message, when you are thinking about how to do this, check in with where is it coming from? What's the intention behind it? And is it honesty and truth and expression? And then the second piece is, when there is a response, or if you even play out if there is a response, you have to understand, am I okay with separating the fact that the response actually probably has nothing to do with me? The response is a reflection of that person. And so when you are, putting things online, even in the smallest of ways, like you're going to get judgment. You are going to get people who disagree. You are going to get people who you upset, you trigger because of so many reasons. Something that happened to them, something that they can't face yet, something that you're reflecting back to them that they don't want to hear. And so as a creator, you have to separate yourself from that. And you have to understand those people don't get a say in how you show up. And so as I'm even recording this episode, right, I sit with, am I aligned with sharing this story? Am I sharing this story because I want to feed into the drama? No. Am I sharing this story because it's a very real thing that happened to me in the last week? Yes. And there are a lot of lessons in it. And that is what my podcast is. It's lessons for business owners based on my experience. So where is it coming from? Connecting back, like what is that place that it's coming from? And then can you share, if you can share it with neutrality, now you are separated from anyone's response. And, I have a couple of rules that I live by with this, which is one, I will take no advice from people who are not in the arena. And so if somebody is not in the arena creating content, showing up online, and building a business like what I want to build or what I am building, they don't get a say. They don't have an opinion in how I create content, if it's good, if it's bad, whatever. You got to be in the arena for me to take that seriously. Second, unless you are a direct person in my life, a family member, a friend, somebody that knows me well, you don't get to have an opinion on what I'm doing. And if you are not, so you're in my audience and I don't know you, there's no way you can have a full opinion because you don't have the full picture. So by me taking that opinion on a small picture that somebody has, it's not accurate, right? But if you know me and you've seen all of me and you've seen the good, you've seen the bad, you've seen my ups, you've seen my downs, you've seen, like there are a few people who have seen that whole gym story play out. They've seen my side, they've seen all this, like they've seen how I processed it, they've seen how upset I was, they've seen how I've talked about it. Those people get an opinion. And I sent those people the podcast and they all were like, this is great. Like you didn't say anything bad. So anyways, those are some rules that I live by. Now, when you think about controversial things that you're going to share, here's the reality in content creation. People love controversy. People ultimately love drama. It's why this podcast episode is like, it blew up. It's going to be our number one downloaded of the year so far, which is, I think, hilarious. And I didn't even mean for that to happen. I am not saying create drama. Like in no way do I want to feed into it. Immediately, like I can tell the difference too when I'm responding from a grounded, centered place and when I'm reacting. And when this first happened, like I could feel in my body, I was like, oh, hell no. Do you mess with my kids? And I was pissed. I went and worked out. I calmed down and I slept on it and was like, all right, here's how I'm handling it. And that doesn't mean I'm going to back away and be scared. You cannot threaten me and silence me when I am being my full, authentic, aligned self. But I can feel the difference of responding in a place of drama and responding in a place of centered, grounded. So when you are thinking about controversy, the thing that I was saying is people love controversy. They love drama. They love, like, we're humans, right? And a lot of times social media is people's entertainment in drama. So I am in no way saying create drama, but I am saying your content will do better when you say what you really think, when you are unfiltered and you are unapologetic behind that and you are fully willing to be honest. And as I reflected on this whole situation, I was like, one of the biggest things, like I get myself into these situations sometimes where I'm super honest and it upsets somebody. And this has happened to me since I was a kid. And it's because I don't have a problem being honest. I don't have a problem being direct. And I would rather people to me be direct and honest than try to fluff things up. So when you think about like even asking yourself questions around when it comes to your industry, like what is the unfiltered truth? What do you really believe? What do you stand against? What do you stand for? What is a story of something that happened that fired you up, that pissed you off, that you're like, this is not right? Those things need to come out in your content. And the more secure you are in yourself, the more confident you will be in sharing those things. Because oftentimes we don't share those things because the response to them, which there will sometimes be negative response, right? The response to them we can't handle because we make it mean something about us. When you are secure in yourself, and that's why you have to come from that place of alignment, right? You can't share something and be like either doing it for someone else or doing it because someone told you to or you thought that you should do this or whatever. You have to be fully aligned. And my previous podcast episode, in between this one, I talked about that connection back to yourself and how that is the magic formula when it comes to business right now, because so many people are letting AI think for them or the noise of what other people are doing think for them. And that connection back to yourself, the stronger that is, the more unapologetic you are with that, the more grounded you are in that, the more secure you are in that, the louder you're able to be. And not in a let me be loud from a drama standpoint, let me stand for what I believe. Let me be the voice that somebody needs to hear. And you know what is so ironic is that podcast episode, that same day, I got probably like 5 messages from people who didn't even know this gym, right? Like that wasn't even the point of the podcast episode. And again, I didn't even say the name. I didn't say anything. Like it could have just been let go of. But I got so many messages from people that were like, I'm in a time in my life where something fell apart or something didn't work how I wanted, or I'm like experiencing a bunch of change. And that episode reminded me that I can trust that because that's what the message was about. And so again, the positive impact that I had in that episode and that message and that story, like that real thing that I went through, the positive impact that I had, that I can have with that by sharing that message outweighs the judgment or the negative impact. Because if you still sit and ask me, like if you would have sat and said to me, let's say right before I recorded the episode, I'm like, you can record this episode and you can share the story, but there's a chance your kids are going to get kicked out of the gym. I would have said, I'm still recording it because if that's the response, I don't want my kids there anyways. And I will not be silenced. Like this is a real thing that I want to talk about. And so in your business, in your life, what are those things? Maybe sit and reflect on like, what are the stories? What are the real life lessons? What are the beliefs that you have that you are holding back? Maybe for a small reason, maybe for a big reason. Maybe you do have somebody in your life who, if they see it, they're going to get pissed. But now they have power over you because they have power over your voice. And our voice is something that nobody else has. We all have a voice and we all have the freedom and free will to use that voice. And so many people do not fully use their voice because they are afraid of hurting somebody else's feelings, of making somebody else mad, of making someone feel bad, whatever. Again, if you come from a place of neutrality, and in that podcast episode, I was not trying to hurt somebody. I was speaking my truth about an experience. And so then, like I said, the reaction now has nothing to do with me because I shared my truth. So when you come from that place, and you have to get to that place sometimes it takes months, right? Over a situation, you got to wait. Like when you go through a big situation, sometimes it's not appropriate to share it yet. When you come from a centered place, when you come from a clear place, now you can only do good with that. And you can positively impact people with your voice. And that is something that I don't take for granted. And I am grateful for every day that I have a platform, that I get to share this experience. And now someone listening to this episode who's holding back on speaking truth, on speaking what they stand for, on standing up for themselves, is holding back and now gets to have that permission and gets to say, well, if Emily's okay with her kids getting kicked out of a gym in order to share her truth, like I'm going to do it. And that's why I do what I do. And then the last thing I wanted to say on this is like, let's say you're on the other side. let's just say that you are on the other side and a business decides or somebody decides to share something about you that upsets you or you think makes you look bad. Now, if we look at this in the flip side, the human reactive triggered place is to go, how do I get back power? How do I get control? How do I hurt this person? The best thing that this person could have done is reached out to me and said, hey, I heard the podcast and I don't agree with everything that you said on that podcast. Let's have a conversation about it. Let's be human. Let's just have a conversation about it. And so if you're on the flip side where this happens, like if this happened to me, I'd be like, I'll come on the podcast. Like, let's talk about this. Or like, let's have a real conversation, because at the end of the day, we're all just humans. And I feel like that also gets lost in, like, you can send this long message with legal threats and now you've disconnected yourself from the person behind it, like, and the kids that you've impacted. So also remembering, anytime in these situations, it goes a long way to just be like, let's just be human. Let's be human about it. And I fully recognize, like, there are pieces to this story that I'm sure is in my reality that this other person doesn't think is the reality. And like, that's the human experience, right? It doesn't take away from my honest experience. And can we look at it and say there's no right or wrong? Sure. Yes. But I still have my experience. I still have my opinions. So all in all, I wanted to share that story. That was like the biggest response I've had to my podcast before that impacted my kids, which is wild. And I'm really upping my content game. And so I suspect that more of this is going to happen, not because I'm trying to trigger people, but because I'm going to be more honest. I'm going to be louder with my voice and unapologetic and not afraid of what people think. I am not afraid of that. Like, I am very secure in myself and very secure in how I show up for this community. And do I make mistakes? Totally. Like, if I would have gone back and listened to that podcast and been like, ooh, like, you were a little triggered in some of those things and you shouldn't have shared it that way, you know what I would do? I'd be sitting here right now recording the episode saying that, because I have no problem looking at myself in the mirror and saying, here's where I fell short, because we're human. So am I going to make mistakes in how I create content and how I show up for this community? Absolutely. Am I going to own it right back into this, community and own it? Yes. And that's what people are connected to, right? Being real, being human. I can honestly say I went back to listen to that podcast and I feel fully aligned with everything that I said. There's some things that I was like, dang, if I knew everybody was going to listen to this, I would have said some more, but we're not going to do that. So think about the places that you are holding back. And this could be content creation, but it also could just be in your life. Like, this is the other thing that I see. I was saying, like, I get myself in these situations because I have direct conversations is so many times do I see people who are feeling a certain way about something, but they're afraid of hurting somebody's feelings, or they are afraid of upsetting someone or whatever. So they say nothing. And to me, in my relationships, I'm like, I'd rather not have the relationship than have it be built off of dishonesty and pretending. Like, be fully honest with me, even if it's not what I want to hear, because I respect that. And I do the same. Right? And so where in your life are you holding back? Are you misaligned in either a relationship, something in your environment, a way that you're showing up, because you're not living for yourself, because you are allowing fear to drive the show? And the more you can lean into that truth, the more you can lean into that conviction, that honest conviction, which in my last episode I talked about, you got to have time where you sit with yourself and you say, like, what do I really think? What do I really think about this? And it took me time to process this situation. That's why I didn't share it for 6 months. I also wasn't trying to be vindictive. So it just came out because it was a real thing that happened. And I recognize that some of you who, like, maybe don't go to a gym, or like it's not a big part of your life, you're probably like, this is so insane. Like, all of this over a gym. I know. It's absolutely insane. It's ridiculous. And as much as I love CrossFit, like, it does any community based experience, there's a drama side to it, right? And that is part of what happened, right? Like, I didn't fit into the community anymore because I wasn't worshiping the owner and I was doing my own thing. And I know it sounds so ridiculous, like, to kick kids out of it is ridiculous, but it's one of those things too where you're like, there are such bigger problems in life than this. I know, and I get it, but hopefully I've turned it into lessons that you can relate to and you can connect with. And if in your content you are holding back, understand that it's better to be fully honest. It's better to show up from that place than to quiet yourself because you're scared. Or in my case, like I will not be threatened. So that won't work on me. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hopefully this is the last of the gym stories. For real. I will talk to you guys in next episode.